Okay, Monday, 6 May, in the year of our Lord 2024. Obviously, a day of enormous political heat. It's only going to get ratcheted up. I think now we're stripping the mask off of all of this about this vast criminal conspiracy against President Trump, a criminal conspiracy from the FBI and the Justice Department up and down on this criminal conspiracy about President Trump. And now more than ever, we need a formal process. We can't just do this scattergun. We need a formal process to bring this all together. I'm very fortunate. I get Ben Harnwell. Now, look, Ben is going to be traveling for the next couple of days. We got a lot to talk about on the Ukraine situation. Ben's going to be traveling for the next couple of days, and I want to make sure Ben is kind enough to join us. It's not easy when Ben joins us on the evening shows because obviously it's much later in Rome, where our international bureau is located. I'm going to get Ben on here. We're going to talk about Ava Vlar's one of her great speeches. We're going to play it entirely in just a moment. And Ben, you've been covering this closer than any reporter, any news bureau head in the world, quite frankly, and certainly in the United States, or anything to deal with, CNN or Fox or anything, which is not just Ukraine, but the broader context of Ukraine. It's come up, Ben, that $3.5 billion, and we had Carrie Lake on the morning show. This thing was slipped in at the last, like $3.5 billion of this Ukraine money was a bailout, went to basically set up feeder agencies, offices in foreign countries to expedite, exacerbate, and accelerate mass migration into the United States, and particularly 2 new offices in the Middle East. And people are furious over here. And to be honest, one of the things with Johnson, we're hammering because MTG started the show this morning with this motion to vacate. And one of my points is that, if you're supporting what he's doing, tell me what exactly he's doing. This was never brought up. 2 things never brought up in Ukraine. Number one, we were going to sign a 10-year deal right afterwards. Remember, this was supposed to be it. Number 2, that there was anything dealing with, since we weren't doing anything to stop the southern border, certainly you wouldn't be funding anything to exacerbate the invasion of our country. But lo and behold, it is. Your thoughts, and particularly in context of the very, I got to say, moving and serious nature of what you talked about last night, and seeing you believe the collapse of Europe, but you didn't. You thought the United States could still hold on. Do you still believe that, Ben Harnwell, when you see what the leaders in this country have done? And here's the thing. They never brought it up to the American people and never made it part of the debate, sir?
Steve, it's absolutely disgusting, this. When I was reading this early on today, it's difficult for me to say to the Warren posse just how angry, how livid I was at seeing this. Okay, so, and you quite properly put these 2 things together. I posted this morning on my Getter feed at Harnwell, which is my surname, top of my feed right now. I basically break down what the great historian of the comparative studies of the study of comparative civilizations, Arnold Toynbee, had said that of the 21 great civilizations in mankind's history, 19 of them had been undermined from within through moral decay rather than by conquest from without. And when I posted that quote this morning, summarizing our talk on yesterday's show, I added in the reflection that perhaps when it comes to the collapse of the Judeo-Christian West, we need to add a third category, not necessarily moral decay, not necessarily conquest from without, because I suggested that these are symptoms of an underlying cause. And what is that underlying cause? I suggested on my Getter feed that we've been betrayed by our overlords. And yet, posted that this morning, and then there were no coincidences, right? Providentially, this story breaks a couple of hours later. I cannot think of a greater illustration of how we in the West, you guys in the United States, obviously have been betrayed by your political class than this illustration here. What this is basically is it's a project to turn the whole of the United States into Dearborn. That's really Dearborn, Michigan. That's really what these people want to do. It's what the Uni Party wants to do. See, I'd had this phrase in the past that that you've got to watch out for Democrats, because what they're really trying to do is turn North America into South America. But really, it's actually, and of course there is that dynamic as well, but it's far more nefarious. The betrayal is so much deeper than that. This is basically a project to ship in right across the United States, not only future Democrat voters, of course, but sort of largely, and sadly to say, there are many Muslims that have come over to the United States who are American first. There are many, possibly, if I might dare to say, many more who are not. And this will just exacerbate that. So you ask me, Steve, do I still have faith that the United States can make it through its present crisis? Yes, I do, because I think its founding ideals are that great and that transcendent that even now the country can still turn it around. But you basically have to. This is This is a MAGA audience, an America First audience, right? You really have to concentrate. And as much as you are concentrating on putting Donald Trump in the White House in November, you have to concentrate on something else, which is just as important. And in fact, if you don't, right, and I can say this because I can say this, I say this with hesitation and with humility, because I'm not American, I'm not living in America. I have no intentional plans to go and live in America. So I can't really sit here and hector another country. But I say this with humility. But the second thing that you need to be doing, you great war room posse, is, and this is as important as November, is primarying every mofo in the congressional GOP and in the Senate GOP, basically every single one of them, because they are all useless. Listen, Steve, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I was the chief of staff in a parliamentary office. Now, in the European Parliament, the offices are smaller than they are on the US Congress. But I've been over to congressional offices, as have you, obviously, and Senate offices. Where are they? The Rayburn building, right? I've seen how many people work in those offices, right? It is not possible. It is not possible that nobody knew that this had just been slipped in and hidden. You have Senator, what's he called? Senator Schmidt, who comes out
of
says,
Missouri. Yeah.
Basically said this is, it's a disgrace that he's posturing now on X, on Twitter, saying this is basically a supercharged effort to
I think, look,
mass migration. It's not acceptable, Steve.
Hang on.
Not acceptable.
I know, but hang on.
It's not acceptable.
I think in his defense, but he was one of the biggest defenders. I think he's telling us, in his defense, I think he's telling us this actually was just slipped in. So we're going to get to the bottom of it. Trust me. I agree. We got to get to the bottom of it, because I want to just go back to your thing on Toynbee. The third way is betrayal. And this is an absolute in-your-face betrayal. And this is why we're huge supporters of the motion to vacate. This is why we're huge supporters on removing McConnell, because the people in this country that want to fight for this country and want to bequeath the constitutional republic that is the centerpiece of the Judeo-Christian West are 2/3 of the nations, and at minimum, maybe 75%, and are being betrayed every day by the uniparty elite. So I thought yesterday with you, and then this breaking story, and it ties together what's happening on the campus, et cetera. I want to get to these speeches, but I want to have you sum up for a second, is that why is it, and this is what, we're going to have someone from Red Ice TV, a segment on white culture in the second half of the show. But as I keep arguing, why is it white leaders? These are not, this is not a multi-ethnic or diverse group of leaders that have done this. The leaders that have done this are all white in Europe and basically in the United States. Why was it that Caucasians were the ones at the leadership level that benefited the most, and the elites from the party of Davos to the party of Wall Street and Silicon Valley? Why was it, give me a minute or two, why was it they that lost faith, and not the working class and the middle class of both Europe and the United States?
Well, Steve, you said a number of times on the show, and it's a brilliant insight, that many civilizations have declined and have been declined because they've been pushed to the edge, to the end by their leadership. But never before in human history have you had a class of grifters who grifted more on the way down than on the way up. This is all by design. I think it's so obvious. It's in a sense, it's sort of conspiratorial, and in a sense, to say that it's all planned. This is all intended, and it sounds a little out there. But when you look into these things, what other explanation is there that you can superimpose on top of all these phenomena that you see to try and sort of work out what the underlying meaning of these events are? This is all intended. It is all planned, because they're not dilettantes. These people who are running our societies are what we call our sociopathic overlords. These people, this is their vocation. This is what they are. But to grift is what they are born to do. This is their calling. So it's not that they're just sort of bumbling along, like we often call Joe Biden, President Magoo. They're not sort of bumbling along. Oh, look how many sort of hundreds of billions we're making for ourselves. What a happy coincidence. No, this is all designed. The more chaos and more disaster there is in society, the more fear there is in people, the more people, even the free people, even the American people, the more they will cling for fear to government. And that is, I think, the only rational thing that a person, when confronted with these facts, can conclude.
Yeah. Ben, your Getter feed has now become a must read. Where do people go to get it? You're putting up great stuff at Toynbee and really breaking down. You're taking Ukraine and broadening out to the topic that it really is. Where do people go?
Thanks, Steve. Thanks so much. At Harnwell, it's my surname there, at Harnwell on Getter. And really, I have absolutely some great, my top 10, top dozen posts are some of the best I've ever put out on the feed right now. Thanks, Steve. Thanks very much.
Brilliant stuff. Thanks. Ava Vlar, the reason today I want this speech, because I think it frames so much of what's going on in the world, and it's from a young person. As you know, Trump is winning now under 30s by 5%. I think he's winning under 30s globally by more than 5%. And the reason is people like Ava Vlar. This speech was at CPAC Hungary. It's gotten over 50 million views, 50 million views from a young woman we've had on this show a number of times. Why is this speech resonating with people? Because I think it puts out front her proud Christian heritage, what we're fighting for, and what this fight's all about. This is, at the end of the day, a spiritual war of the most intense, I think, in human history. It's a war also that we cannot, there is no possibility we can lose this. As I keep saying, we only lose if we quit. Now, Ava Vlar, this amazing speech with over 50 million views.
Hello, Hungary. Hello, Budapest. Hello, fellow Europeans and American friends. Thank you so much for having me. Allow me to skip formalities for a moment and dive right into a subject that is not so cheerful, but very, very necessary to discuss. Let me walk you through the past 7 days in Europe. This week in Stockholm, 3 elderly women in their 70s were stabbed in broad daylight on the streets. In London, 4 people were stabbed in a time span of just 42 hours. In Paris, hundreds of African migrants took to the street to riot. And in Brigalow, also in France, yet another church was burned down to the ground. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is just a few incidents in just a couple of days on our beautiful continent. But we all know that these incidents aren't incidents anymore. If there's one thing that's for sure, is that we know, and our governments also know, that there is a link between mass migration and crime. In the Dutch city of Dordrecht, something interesting happened the other day. They announced, and this is a small city in the Netherlands, in my home country, that a new asylum center will be put in that little town. And what did the municipality do? They said, we are going to offer citizens who live in the vicinity of this center 1,000 euros to take extra safety measures. Our new reality in Europe consists of frequent rapes, stabbings, killings, murders, shootings, even beheadings. But let me be clear about one thing. This did not used to happen before. This is a newly imported problem. Samuel P. Huntington predicted this over 25 years ago when he wrote, and I quote, "In the new world of mass migration, the most pervasive, important, and dangerous conflicts will not be between the social classes. They will not be between the rich and the poor. They will be between peoples belonging to different cultural entities. Tribal wars and ethnic conflicts will occur within civilizations." Well, boy, was he right. And the worst part is, we as a society seem to have become indifferent to it. When another white boy or white girl dies at the hand of an immigrant, we might shake our head, we might let out a sigh, we might even get angry for a minute or two, and then we go on with our lives. We offer the family thoughts and prayers, but nothing ever changes. Ladies and gentlemen, what does that say about us? This is a response of a society that has already given up, a society that has already accepted its defeat. But is this true? Have we given up? Do we really accept the new reality that our globalist leaders have in mind for us? I know one thing for sure, and that is that if nothing changes, if we don't start to seriously fight for our continent, for our religion, for our people, our countries, then this time that we live in will go down in history as the time in which Western nations no longer had to get invaded by hostile armies in order to be conquered. This time will then go down in history as the period in which the invader was actively invited in by a corrupt elite. And not only did this corrupt elite invite the enemy in, they made the native population pay for it too. Everyone who has eyes can see it. The native, white, Christian European population is being replaced at an ever-accelerating rate. Let me back this up for you with some statistics from my home country. Let's take Amsterdam, the capital. Amsterdam currently consists of 56% migrants. The Hague, 58% migrants. Rotterdam, almost 60% migrants. And of course, most of these immigrants come from non-Christian, non-Western, African and Middle Eastern countries. Conclusion, the Dutch population is already outnumbered in the majority of our cities. But let's look onwards. London, 54% migrants. Again, conclusion, native population outnumbered. Brussels, color me shocked, 70% migrants. Conclusion, native population majorly outnumbered. And other Europeans will, of course, follow suit soon if they haven't already. So I'm going to draw the forbidden conclusion here. The Great Replacement theory is no longer a theory. It's reality. And what's interesting about replacement is that the establishment will either deny its existence, or when they admit to it, they say that it's a good thing that the native European population is soon no longer a majority on its own continent. Dutch national disgrace and dubbed climate pope Frans Timmermans already stated in 2015 that diversity is humanity's destiny. and that Europe will be diverse. And of course, by now, I think we all know what they mean with the word diversity. It means less white people, less of you. Imagine this in an Asian or an African country. Imagine their leaders rejoicing in the fact that their people will soon no longer be a majority in their own country. Absolutely unthinkable, unimaginable. So what in the world is wrong with our leaders? The underlying sentiment of what they say is always the same. Our establishment claims that white people are evil and that our history is somehow fundamentally different from that of others. Consciously or unconsciously, they have sucked up the lies and the anti-white dogmas of the neo-Marxist critical race theory. That's why the totalitarians in Brussels are trying to force you, the Hungarian people, a sovereign nation, to accept immigrants despite the fact that the population has said no, and so has the government. But make no mistake, the majority of the Dutch people haven't asked for this either. Just like Brussels is forcing Hungary to accept these hordes of immigrants, they are doing the same now, even in the smallest of towns in the Netherlands. No part may remain Dutch in the traditional sense of the word. No part of Europe may remain European. And it's not difficult to understand why. If the old Europe still exists in certain places, then people will be able to compare the new Europe to the old, and newsflash, they will prefer the old. That's why the Eurocrats hate Hungary so much. And their message is clear. Our way of life, our Christian religion, our nations, they have to go, without exception. Their vision of the future is the neoliberal, unrecognizable Europe, where every city becomes kind of like Brussels. Ugly, dirty, unsafe, zero social cohesion, where the buildings are constantly under construction and they never ever seem to finish. And even when they do, the end result is uglier somehow than what they started with. And what are we left with? A permanent state of isolation, confusion, and disorientation. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the New World Order. So what's the antidote? A strong Christian Europe of sovereign nation states. That's why we need to outright reject the lie that nationalism causes war. It's not nationalism or national sovereignty that causes war. It's expansionism. And where in Europe do we find that nowadays? In one place and one place only, Brussels. Isn't it funny how the same people who erode our national sovereignty and love to do it, give it all up to the Eurocrats there, that those people are now telling us that we need to spend billions and billions of euros on the national sovereignty of Ukraine? It's a joke, honestly, and it's a pretty sick, expensive, and dangerous joke. During a recent interview, I got asked by an interviewer, do you think that you ever go too far? Do you think that you're ever too radical? I thought about it for a second, and I said, no. No, I don't think I go too far. Truth be told, ladies and gentlemen, I think we in Europe do not go far enough. I think that if we really think about the organized, structural attack on our civilization, that we don't do enough. Do we do enough to stop the attack on our families, on our continent, on our countries, on our religion? When we hear about another murder, another stabbing of a young innocent child, do we do enough? When we know that our national sovereignty has been given up in less than a century to Brussels, do we do enough? When we hear that Christian kids in Germany are now converting to Islam to fit in, do we do enough? I don't think so. The totalitarian institute of the European Union needs to come down. Let me be clear, I don't believe in reforms. When the foundation of your institution is rotten, and that is the case in Brussels, you can rebuild the house on top of it all you want, but it's still going to crumble. So the only answer is the Tower of Babel needs to be destroyed. Ladies and gentlemen, we are the daughters and sons of the greatest nations on earth. And we need to ask ourselves, what has happened to us? Where do we come from? And more importantly, where are we going? Our elites have declared a war on us, and now it is time for us to put on the full armor of God, fight back, and win. Thank you so much.
All this nonsense, all this spin, they can't handle the truth.
War Room Battleground with Stephen K. Bannon.
Okay, I want you to put a pin in the depth of what she was just talking about, in the fight as she sees it, of what she's talking about, Eva Vlar. I'm going to play in a minute the exact opposite of that. This is the secular view of secular elites in Europe and their winning. First, times of turbulence. I'm so proud about the end of the dollar empire. This is the fifth free installment. It's a central bank digital currency, but it gets to exactly one of the problems we're going to talk about with the Financial Times clip I'm about to play. The elites in this country, the Financial Times are going to talk about the post-war international rules-based order. The foundational element of that is Bretton Woods. That is the currency agreement that we agreed to after the war. Of course, that was broken and breached, as Jim Rickards tells us. It was breached when President Nixon took us off the gold standard in, 1973, over a weekend at Camp David. He took us off the gold standard. That led to a 13 or 14-year currency war until President Reagan stopped it with the Plaza Accords back in, I think, in 87, 88, with the Plaza Accords. It was the underpinning of the post-war international rules-based order, which every day they harp on. This is an American financial kind of underwriting. It's coming apart. It's coming apart because our elites in this country have fiscal and monetary mismanagement. You have to understand this. If you're to understand your own personal financial life and you understand politics today, you must understand the macroeconomic component of that, the financial component of that, and the currency component of that. For the last 3 years, we've been working with Birch Gold on the end of the dollar empire. The fifth free installment, this is about the central bank digital currency, what your Federal Reserve is spending their time working on, why the BRICS nations are buying gold at record rates. The central banks are buying gold at record rates. So make sure you go to birchgold.com/Bannon to get that. Also, I would be remiss unless I talked about the coffee, Warpath Coffee, which I love. It gets me jacked up. You want to stay fired up during the day. Warpath.coffee/War Room to get your discount, but check all the endorsements from your fellow posse members. And also Sacred Human Health, the grass-fed beef livers. Just read what your compatriots say about it, about the energy boost. Read it today, sacredhumanhealth.com, grass-fed beef livers. Okay, Ed Luce, one of my favorites at the Financial Times. Let's roll it, compare this to Eva Vlar. I'll be back in about a minute.
The European strategy up until now has been to hope that Trump doesn't get reelected. I mean, there's not much you can do in practical terms to hedge against this horrific possibility. Trump first time round was pretty bad, and I think there's an understanding that if he gets elected again in November, it's going to be by a multiple much, much worse than it was last time. So in terms of trade wars, Trump believes that US deficits with any country means, by definition, America is being ripped off. So there would be a transatlantic trade war, a far greater scale than there was with the aluminum and steel tariffs we got last time. There would, of course, be the end of NATO, if not legally, certainly de facto, in terms of Trump saying that countries that haven't spent 2% of their GDP are not paying their membership dues. He sees this as a club. And therefore we will not come to your aid if you're attacked by Putin.
Okay, it's not a club, but it's not an alliance. It's a protector of the United States. Ed Luce and the elites in the Financial Times of London and their advertisers and their readers don't get this yet. We are through underwriting the security of Europe. You're going to have, if Putin is such a problem, you're going to have to step up as allies and pay your fair share. You're going to have to step up as allies and pay your fair share. We are adamant about this. We are not going to relent on this. We're tired of the wealthy and rich deadbeats in Europe, from Belgravia to the south of France to Tuscany to the Swiss Alps, allowing their population to have free health care, free college, 6 weeks vacation, pensions at 50, that the American people don't have and have to underwrite it. You're going to have to start to pay for your own defense. Now, what I'm very proud, in CPAC Hungary, which was just monumental, because Orban is at the tip of the spear of this fight, although I don't 1,000% agree with everything Viktor Orban does, particularly he's way too close to, I think, the CCP and plays way too much footsie with a she. But hey, the world's not perfect. But CPAC Hungary was extraordinary. I was honored to give a short introduction of my thoughts about what's happening with CPAC Hungary and why CPAC and Viktor Orban have been such a leader in this movement. And then I was very honored to have, we sent a contingent over there. Captain Maureen Bannon gave a terrific speech. So we're going to play this, and then we're going to go out with, we've got some intense footage of Stephanie Rule and finish what they started. This is all about MAGA. Remember, the CPAC Hungary, all of it is about MAGA and the ascendance of MAGA. Mo Bannon represented us. Captain Bannon represented us at CPAC Hungary, gave a fascinating speech. I want to play this in its entirety, and we will be right back to comment and discuss. This is Mo Bannon at Budapest the other day, CPAC Hungary. Let's go ahead and let it rip.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to address all of you at CPAC Hungary today. I have always been told how beautiful Budapest is, and I was blown away by the beauty when I arrived. Much of Hungary's history is marked by the struggle for freedom. What many of us have learned from Hungary's past is that God, homeland, and family are the foundational values that ensure a nation's survival. Prime Minister Viktor Orban has been a leader in the sovereignty movement worldwide. His actions defend not only the citizens of Hungary, but Europe and the Judeo-Christian West. They must not be minimized. Prime Minister Orban and Hungary are the leaders to the rest of the world because they have courage. Not only does the courage of Prime Minister Orban, but that of Hungary inspire leaders from all over the world to step up. History teaches us that courage is the most important of all values and virtues because it is upon courage that all virtues rest. We are gathered in Hungary at the center of this fight. Prime Minister Orban shows us, just like President Trump, that if we don't quit, we win. The globalists would do anything they can to get you to quit. They want us to quit both ahead of your parliamentary elections in June and our presidential election in November. The fight stops when we say it does. War Room was built for this fight, for this time in history. As Chief Executive Officer of War Room, I commit to CPAC, Hungary, America, the MAGA movement, Prime Minister Orban, and especially President Trump that we have not yet begun to fight. Thank you. My father was unable to join us here in Hungary today. However, please turn your attention to the screens for a message from my father, Stephen K. Bannon.
Thank you for inviting me to address CPAC Hungary, which is all important. One of my heroes in the world today, in addition to President Trump, is Viktor Orban, the president of your country. He is a leader in this populist nationalist or sovereignty movement throughout the world. His actions in defending Hungary, in defending the citizens of Hungary, in defending all of Europe and the Judeo-Christian West cannot be minimized. What you're doing in this conference is uniting and pulling together many of the leaders and providing a platform. But particularly, it's highlighting on a world stage the importance of Hungary as a leader, as a nation that is a leader and an individual that is not just a leader in Viktor Orban, but inspiring young leaders throughout the world to step up. And that's why we can't thank you enough for what you're doing in this fight. Our fight is long from over. You have the European parliamentary elections. You have so much going on. We have the presidential election. But this is a process. Because I can tell you one thing. If we don't quit, we win. If we don't quit, we win. And they will do everything to make sure you quit. The Soros-backed globalists, and it's more than just Soros, and it's deeper than just Soros, and the money is actually coming from many different angles right now to crush the freedom of Hungary, just like the Bolsheviks and the Soviets tried to crush you in the 1950s. It's coming from everywhere in every direction because they want to inflict as much pain as possible so you will quit. The courage that you have right now of having this and providing this platform for freedom, liberty, and most importantly, the sovereignty of the nation state is all important. I thank you for having a delegation from the War Room. Very much thank you giving a platform to Captain Maureen Bannon. The War Room supports you guys nonstop, Matt and Mercedes Schlapper, CPAC, but particularly one of the great heroes on the world stage and someone that the globalist elite want to destroy just as much as they want to destroy Donald J. Trump, who now is on trial for up to 700 years in prison, besides bankrupting him in the United States of America. And that would be your own president and leader, Viktor Orban. Once again, just an incredible hero. You guys are an inspiration to the world. And War Room will always and everywhere have your back. Have a great conference. Fight on. Okay, times of turbulence, as you know, you need to think about how you hedge your financial risks. There's no better way than talking to the experts at Birch Gold. birchgold.com/Bannon, and you get to talk to Philip Packer and the team. Do it today. Find out what gold has been a hedge for 8,000 years of man's recorded history, because I can guarantee you only one thing. It's going to be a lot more turbulent in this country and the world than it has been. A lot more turbulent. Other night, very fascinating interview with the author Isaac Arnsdorf of Finish What We Started, about the MAGA movement, about the precinct strategy. Stephanie Ruhle was not agreeing with all of it. Let's play that from MSNBC, and I will be back immediately after.
The volume for this one, because we are talking Project 2025, the far-right program stacked with Trump allies who have written the playbook for a second Trump term. Between now and Election Day, we're going to read passages from that 900-page playbook so you can begin to understand just how dangerous this plan could be. Here's tonight's excerpt. Revelations regarding the FBI's role in the Russia hoax of 2016, big tech collusion, and the suppression of Hunter Biden's laptop in 2020 strongly suggest that the FBI is completely out of control. The next conservative administration should conduct an immediate, comprehensive review of all major active FBI investigations and activities and terminate any that are unlawful or contrary to the national interest. This is straight from the playbook for Donald Trump's second term. But my next guest has even more reporting on what Trump could do. Isaac Arzendorf joins me. He's a national political reporter for The Washington Post and author of the new book, Finish What We Started, the MAGA movement's ground war to end democracy. It is out now. This is some book. You have covered this story for months and months. I want you to start with helping us understand Trump's plan and Project 2025's plan as it relates to the Department of Justice.
Well, Trump doesn't talk in sentences like what you read, and he's not reading those chapters, but that's sort of the detailed wraparound for what Trump is saying in his speeches, which is, I am your retribution, and what Trump is saying privately to advisors, which from our reporting is actually naming individual critics who he wants a second-term Justice Department to investigate.
Many of the people who are spearheading Project 2025 are Christian nationalists. How much power could they have over a second Trump term?
Well, the larger philosophical shift here is away from like what we think about as Reagan conservative orthodoxy. If the government is the problem, get it out of the way. And now a way of thinking about the government, sometimes called common good conservative, but common good conservatism. How can conservatives or Republicans use the government to achieve policy aims? So it's a much more assertive, aggressive, muscular use of executive power in particular and federal power more generally than we're used to seeing from conservatives who have traditionally, historically been about small government.
Steve Bannon was sort of the original architect of the MAGA movement. We very rarely hear his name anymore, maybe in part because of all the legal problems he got in, raising the money for the wall, stealing the money from the people who gave to building the wall. Where is he now? Is he behind the scenes as a puppet master, even if he's not standing next to Trump, double popped collar and all?
Well, it's more like it was back in 2015 and 16, where Bannon has this role of evangelizer and media figure. And he's still extremely influential in that role. I call it like a far right meet the press with the podcast that he runs. And there's a lot that he can do from that perch, not being officially on the campaign.
Hold on a minute. A far right meet the press?
I mean,
who outside the far right participates in this program?
Bannon's podcast is the number one most prestigious interview for any Republican politician. I mean, Ronna McDaniel, before she got toppled, was doing interviews on that show.
My God. You say that the MAGA movement has never been more disciplined or strategic. Explain that to us, because the average person sees Trump stumbling into court, falling asleep in his chair, and they don't think it's disciplined at all. So take us inside.
What the movement has done, and Bannon was key in popularizing this at a moment when Trump was kind of out of the picture after January 6th. He was in hiding in Mar-a-Lago for a while, and it was actually the grassroots that drove this, and Bannon that channeled it into taking over the party organization itself, talking about the party ladder from the RNC all the way down to the tiniest, lowliest precincts. And by channeling the movement into that party infrastructure, it gave us this structure and this organization and makes it much more durable than a cult of personality around a single person. And so no matter what's happening with Trump's legal issues or with Trump's campaign, the party field organization, the party pyramid itself is there, and it is bottom to top transformed and unified around election denial and allegiance to Trump.
What do people misunderstand about MAGA, right? Because we watch the likes of Bill Barr, of Chris Sununu, who openly talk about the risk that Donald Trump is, the threat to democracy, and then they turn around and go, but I'm going to vote for him.
Isn't that amazing? I mean, Bill Barr is one of those people who, in our reporting, Trump has singled out as wanting to prosecute, and he'll still vote for him. I think one of the key things I learned is how, you talk about the ballot mules or the voting machines and all these things that we think about as being the allegations that spring up and get knocked down with the election being stolen are not really what it's all about. And it's really about a feeling, a belief about who America is supposed to be for and what was supposed to happen in 2020 and what's supposed to happen in 2024. But the key about purifying the party was
purifying the party.
Well, they're actually totally right that the reason that Trump failed in 2020 was because of a few Republicans who wouldn't go along with it. And by the purpose of taking over the party in this way was to root all of them out and make sure that they wouldn't be there next time.
That's the goal, but so many of these far-right candidates that Trump keeps endorsing are losing in their elections. Like, we have to remind our audience, he's powerful within the Republican Party, but get past primaries, and that guy's a stone-cold loser since 2016.
Well, and it comes down to those Republicans. It's a small, vanishing slice of the electorate, but in a game of inches in a close election, it can absolutely be decisive. And these are the traditional Republicans who don't identify as MAGA, but definitely don't identify as Democrats and are just kind of stranded and struggling with where they're left in this new two-party system. And the way that anti-Trump Republicans and some Democrats have learned to speak to that core constituency and build a new community out of those voters is a huge part of the story of 2022, the midterms, the surprise, and will be a huge part of what happens in November as well.
I think you've seen from this evening's show, our 5 and our 6 o'clock, how intense things are getting. I will commit to you that tomorrow morning show and tomorrow evening show will be just as intense. Like I said, we live in times of turbulence, and we're here in the war room to be your still point in a turning world. Lou Dobbs is next. We're back at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning live. Our great coffee, warpath.coffee. Go check it out. Here's what we love about this, building the alternative economy, is for you to read the reviews of people that have taken the step and used the products and services. Just go to warpath.coffee. Check it out right now. Use the promo code WARM, 15% discount. Lou Dobbs is next. We are back at 10 a.m. tomorrow morning. We'll see you then in the world.